Hello, oh, wait a second. Can you hear me? I don't know if you can. But, hello everyone, or maybe just a writer. Wait a second, I need to turn the fan on.
Hi, kitty.
Oh, you can't see him.
There's the kitty.
We have audio, Captain. Lovely. Once again, my shirt looks purple in the orange light. Hello, Indy Val. Welcome. A little quiet for Death's Head. Well, there's only a little bit that I can turn it up. I guess I could turn it up on here. Am I louder now? Oh, why? I didn't update. Oh, that's awesome. Writer's working on her prompt entry while I read. That is awesome. Okay, what are you doing, little camera? There you go. There's the book. Oh, you're so cute, Bo. Okie dokie. So, if you were not here last session where we read chapters 1 through 5, first of all, there is a VOD that you could watch if you so desire. But second of all, I will try to give you a little recap of what we learned last time. So, we learned that there is a new bachelor in town. He's super rich, and we know that he wants one thing. He wants a hot babe by his side. At least, we assume that he wants that. Apparently, at this time, that's all rich men want. We open on the Bennet parents, and they are discussing this. And Mrs. Bennet very much wants to introduce herself and her daughters, her 5 daughters specifically, to this Mr. Bingley, the new eligible bachelor. And she cannot do so until Mr. Bennet introduces himself to him first. It's all very formal. We don't know how it works, we just know it does. So, Mr. Bennet seems to hem and haw the whole time, but he does in fact do it. And everybody ends up going to a ball, and we learn that Mr. Bingley is in fact eligible, that he is in fact all the qualities you'd want in a man. He's agreeable, he's nice, he's polite, he doesn't smell bad, he's not stupid, and most of all, he parties all night. Very important qualities at this time. However, his friend, who he brought with him, Mr. Darcy, is not any of these qualities. Apparently, Mr. Darcy sucks. However, I have not seen much suckage yet. I have pretty much seen a socially awkward little introvert who doesn't really know what he's doing here and doesn't really want to be here. And he seems to have insulted Elizabeth, who, by the way, is Mr. Bennet's favorite daughter. We learned in chapter 1 that she is his favorite and that he thinks all the rest of his daughters are basic. So keep that in mind. Mr. Darcy insulted Liz at the party. However, she wasn't too mad about it. She went and joked to her friends. It was all good. And I think the last chapter left us talking to the neighbors about what went down. Oh, geez, he made of chocolate too. Who's made of chocolate? Fair. And the writer says about her story, took some thinking to find a moth in my verse that wasn't quite literal. Very fair. Party boy Bingley is leagues above shy boy Darcy, says Green. Exactly. That's the situation that we're in here. I'm trying to remember exactly. Oh, I need to get closer. I'm trying to remember what exactly Mr. Darcy said to Elizabeth that was so insulting, because I do remember they talked about him finding her tolerable, and this being an insult, but they also said a tolerable fortune, and so it doesn't seem too insulting to me, but I don't think he used those exact words. Let's see. Is that the right one? No, I think it's this one. Oh yes, he does. He does literally say she is tolerable. Those were his exact words. She's tolerable, but not handsome enough to tempt me, and I am in no humor at present to give consequence to young ladies who are slighted by other men. Right, because she was not picked by the others. You'd better return to your partner and enjoy her smiles. He doesn't like her smiles. You are wasting your time with me. That's right, that was the other thing. Jane is the pretty sister. So we got Jane, she's the pretty one, and she's a little too optimistic for Elizabeth's taste. We got Mary, who's the smart one. We have Lydia, who's the youngest, but also the tallest. And we have Catherine. And I don't remember much about her other than that her nickname is Kitty. And the vibes from Mr. Bennet is excellent. Exactly. Yes. Yes, indeed. Oh, this kitty. I wish I could put the camera on both me and him at the same time. He is too precious. You are. Too precious. Hello, Norman. Yo, I'm not a moth. Amazing. Make the cat read to us. I think you're just gonna get purrs and meows out of him. Alright. Oh, that's right. And the Mr. Bingley's sisters are, I don't know if they exactly like Jane, but they're willing to let her hang out. Was kind of the thing. I said Kate, and all I could think of was Taming of the Shrew. Did I say Kate? I actually don't think any of them are named Kate. I might have made a mistake. But great to have you here, Ghoulish. What was I gonna say?
What was he gonna say, Kitty? He was gonna say something.
I don't remember. Oh, I didn't. I looked up at the screen and I did. So let me know if anything is off with the reading. I'm just working with my janky little setup, and so if anything seems wrong or uncomfortable, let me know, and I can do my best to either fix it now or next time. Alrighty. Let us begin with Chapter 6. The ladies of Longbourn soon waited on those of Netherfield. The visit was returned in due form. Miss Bennet's pleasing manners grew on the goodwill of Mrs. Hurst and Miss Bingley. Those are the sisters of Mr. Bingley. And though the mother was found to be intolerable, and the younger sisters not worth speaking to, a wish of being better acquainted with them was expressed towards the two eldest. Okay, so I know that's Jane. I don't know who the second eldest is. We know it's not Lydia. And so it's either Mary, Liz, or Kitty. We don't know which. By Jane, this attention was received with the greatest pleasure. But Elizabeth, alright, still saw superciliousness in their treatment of everybody, hardly excepting even her sister, and could not like them. Through their kindness to Jane, such as it was, had a value as arisen, in all probability, from the influence of their brother's admiration. What was going on in that sentence? Okay, that's confusing. So I think it's when it says their brother, it means Miss Bingley and Mrs. Hurst. That it's like she's like, okay, like the fact that there's a probability of influence from Mr. Bingley, that's pretty good, I think. All right. It was generally evident whenever they met that he did admire her, and to her it was equally evident that Jane was yielding to the preference which she had begun to entertain for him from the first, and was in a way to be very much in love. But she considered with pleasure that it was not likely to be discovered by the world in general, since Jane united with great strength of feeling, a composure of temper, and a uniform cheerfulness of manner, which would guard her from the suspicions of the impertinent. She mentioned this to her friend, Miss Lucas. "It may perhaps be pleasant," replied Charlotte, "to be able to impose on the public in such a case, but it is sometimes a disadvantage to be so very guarded. If a woman conceals her affection with the same skill from the object of it, she may lose the opportunity of fixing him, and it will then be but poor consolation to believe the world equally in the dark." Interesting. I feel like we might be getting some foreshadowing there. I feel like Elizabeth is probably going to be doing this with Mr. Darcy as the book continues on. There is so much of gratitude or vanity in almost every attachment that it is not safe to leave any to itself. We can all begin freely. A slight preference is natural enough, but there are very few of us who have heart enough to be really in love without encouragement. In 9 cases out of 10, a woman had better show more affection than she feels. Bingley likes your sister undoubtedly, but he may never do more than like her if she does not help him on. So I guess this is the when was this written? The 1800s. This is the 1800s way of saying laugh at his jokes even if your laugh is fake. It seems like. But she does not. No, she does. But she does. No, who's talking? That's Elizabeth. Okay, but she does help him on as much as her nature will allow. And if I can perceive, I get what she's saying. But she does help him on as much as her nature will allow. If I can perceive her regard for him, he must be a simpleton indeed not to discover it too. Remember, Eliza, that he does not know Jane's disposition as you do. But if a woman is partial to a man and does not endeavor to conceal it, he must find out. Perhaps he must, if he sees enough of her. But though Bingley and Jane meet tolerably often, there's that word again, we meet tolerably often, it is never for many hours together, and as they always see each other in large mixed parties, it is impossible that every moment should be employed in conversing together. Jane should therefore make the most of every half hour in which she can command his attention. When she is secure of him, there will be leisure for falling in love as much as she chooses. Oh, nice. Documancer says Mr. Bennet vibes low-key dad goals. He likes to troll his wife, reads leisurely in his office, and dotes on his daughters. I can already see this. Sad I missed the first reading. I actually do want to finish it so I can read Pride and Prejudice and Zombies finally. Well, there is a VOD, so you totally can go listen to the first 5 chapters if you so desire. Maybe we can get the chapters we cover so we catch up if need be. What do you mean by get? Mako just says, hell yeah, I assume to the dad goals thing. Alright. Your plan is a good one, replied Elizabeth, where nothing is in question but the desire of being well married. And if I were... Go over here. Okay. And if I were determined to get a rich husband, or any husband, I dare say I should adopt it. That's curious. So Elizabeth isn't on husband is life goals train. Makes things extra fun. Interesting. Norman says, from what I've heard, this and zombies are like 75% the same book. Curious. But yeah, so we haven't heard this from Elizabeth yet, that she may not be interested in marrying at all. But these are not Jane's feelings. She's not acting by design. As yet, she cannot even be certain of the degree of her own regard, nor of its reasonableness. She has known him only a fortnight. She dances 4 dances with him at Meryton. She saw him one morning at his own house, and has since dined in company with him 4 times. It is not quite enough to make her understand his character. What is... It sounds weird to my ear to specify at his own house. Like, I'm now just imagining Jane, like, peeking through his window, like, she saw him one morning at his own house. Not as you represent it. Had she merely dined with him, she might only have discovered whether he had a good appetite. But you must remember that 4 evenings have been also spent together, and 4 evenings may do a great deal. Yes, these 4 evenings have enabled them to ascertain that they both like Lincoln better than Commerce, but with respect to any other leading characteristic, I do not imagine that much has been unfolded. Well, said Charlotte, I wish Jane success with all my heart, and if she were married to him tomorrow, I should think she had as good a chance of happiness as if she were to be studying his character for a 12-month. 12-month. Never heard that before. That's fun. I assume that means a year, 12 months. Happiness in marriage is entirely a matter of chance. I can't tell if that's realistic or pessimistic. If the disposition of the parties are ever so well known to each other, or ever so similar beforehand, it does not advance their felicity in the least. Interesting. They always continue to grow sufficiently unlike afterwards to have their share of vexation, and it is better to know as little as possible of the defects of the person with whom you are to pass your life. I don't know, man. I can't tell if this is good advice, bad advice, good advice for back then, but not now. I don't know. Yeah, exactly. Norman says, never has such a direct attempt to immediately marry someone felt so complicated and exhausting. Exactly. You make me laugh, Charlotte. It is not sound. You know it is not sound, and that you would never act in this way yourself. So she's saying, I don't agree with that. I want to get to know my dude first. Wait, is that correct? Yeah, I think so. Occupied in observing Mr. Bingley's attentions to her sister, Elizabeth was far from suspecting that she herself had become an object of some interest in the eyes of his friend. Already interested. Mr. Darcy had at first scarcely allowed her to be pretty. I love that. It's a very accurate, description of what happened last time. You're not allowed to be pretty. I am not allowing for that possibility. He had looked at her without admiration at the ball, and when they next met, he looked at her only to criticize. And no sooner had he made it clear to himself and his friends that she had hardly a good feature in her face, than he began to find it was rendered uncommonly intelligent by the beautiful expression of her dark eyes. To this discovery succeeded some others equally mortifying. Though he had detected with a critical eye more than one failure of perfect symmetry in her form, he was forced to acknowledge her figure to be light and pleasing, and in spite of his asserting that her manners were not those of the fashionable world, he was caught by their easy playfulness. Of this she was perfectly unaware. To her, he was only the man who made himself agreeable nowhere, and who had not thought her handsome enough to dance with. He began to wish to know more of her, and as a step towards conversing with her himself, attempted to her conversation with others. His doing so drew her notice. It was at Sir William Lucas's, where a large party were assembled. This is interesting. I did not expect Darcy to be interested in her so quickly. I mentioned before that I'm pretty sure that the whole book is them in love with each other but not willing to say it. But I didn't realize that would start all the way on page 28, chapter 6. He is already interested. What does Mr. Darcy mean? What does Mr. Darcy mean? Said she to Charlotte, by listening to my conversation with Colonel Forster. That is a question which Mr. Darcy only can answer. But if he does it any more, I shall certainly let him know that I see what he is about. He has a very satirical eye, and if I do not begin by being impertinent myself, I shall soon grow afraid of him. Interesting. I'm not sure. So, I don't know what satirical eye means. Like, I guess he looks, I guess maybe he looks on with, like, criticism kind of thing. Like, kind of a mocking criticism, maybe. And, like, if she doesn't, and she's saying, like, if I don't say something now, I'm gonna get scared of him, I guess. On his approaching them soon afterwards, though without seeming to have any intention of speaking, Miss Lucas defied her friend to mention such a subject to him, which immediately provoking Elizabeth to do it, she turned to him and said, "That's awesome. This is what's making this book fun, is that, like, it's kind of that idea of, like, humans have always been humans, and so, like, even in this prim and proper world, it's like, no, Elizabeth, don't do it. It's just not proper. And then she's like, I'm gonna do it. That's exactly why I'm gonna do it. Norman says, this has me wondering at what point the opposites attract trope of they start off hating one another, so they'll obviously end up together by the end actually started. Was this obvious at the time this was written, or was it a fresh idea? That's a really great question. Something to look up when I do some research, I guess. Alright, Did not you think, Mr. Darcy, that I expressed myself uncommonly well just now when I was teasing Colonel Forster to give us a ball at Meryton? With great energy, but it is a subject which always makes a lady energetic. You're severe on us. It will be her turn soon to be teased. Oh, it'll be her turn soon to be teased, said Miss Lucas. I'm going to open the instrument, Eliza, and you know what follows. That is weirdly ominous. Is this how to be ominous in the 1800s? I'm going to open the instrument, and you know what follows. Yeah, exactly. Elizabeth, no. Elizabeth, yes. Totally. I also love, I think I kind of mentioned this with Kitty, but I love how many nicknames they have. Like, Elizabeth has been called Elizabeth Lizzie by her father, Liz, I don't remember who by, and Eliza a few times, which I just think is fun. Alright, is this, who's talking in this next paragraph here? I guess it's Mrs. Lucas? You are a very strange creature by way of a friend, always wanting me to play and sing before anybody and everybody. If my vanity had taken a musical turn, you would have been invaluable, but as it is, I would really rather not sit down before those who must be in the habit of hearing the very best performers. On Miss Lucas's persevering, however, she added, very well, if it must be so, it must. And gravely glancing at Mr. Darcy, I still can't tell if this is Elizabeth or Miss Lucas talking, I don't know. There's a fine old saying, which everybody here is of course familiar with. keep your breath to cool your porridge, and I shall keep mine to swell my song. What does that mean? Keep your breath to cool your porridge. So, like, don't talk too much. Just, like, keep your breath so that you can blow on your porridge when it's too hot. And then I'll keep mine so I can sing my song, but song is presumably something else. I'm confused in this section. Blows on tea. Her performance was pleasing, though by no means capital. After a song or two, there's literally singing. Is that the instrument that was mentioned? Like, is it like I'm gonna open my instrument and you're gonna sing? Is that what was going on? I guess it means, like, you focus on what you need to, and I'll focus on what I need to. That makes sense. I like that. Her performance was pleasing, though by no means capital. After a song or two, and before she could reply to the entreaties of several that she would sing again, she was eagerly succeeded at the instrument by her sister Mary, who, having, in consequence of being the only plain one in the family, worked hard for knowledge and accomplishments, which was always impatient for display. Okay, so I guess what happened was that Miss Lucas was playing the instrument. So that's what the Open the Instrument was about. And Elizabeth sang. And then we switched out and Mary played the instrument. And I don't know why we don't know what the instrument is. And it feels very vague and ominous. Yeah, exactly. I'll be real, I didn't realize the instrument was an instrument. Exactly. Alright. Mary had neither genius nor taste. Come right out and roast her, why don't ya? Mary had neither genius nor taste, and though vanity had given her application, it had given her likewise a pedantic air and conceited manner, which would have injured a higher degree of intelligence than she had reached. Wasn't Mary the one talking about the difference between pride and vanity yesterday? Like, let me go back for a second here. Maybe it's over here. I think it's at the bottom of a page. I'm not finding it. Yeah, just once in my life I want to have the audacity to casually insult someone so bluntly. Totally. I feel like this could be part of what people enjoy about this book as well, is that the narrator definitely has a voice. the narrator, even though their narrator seems to have, put their own commentary into things. Let's see. Elizabeth, easy and unaffected, had been listened to with much more pleasure, though not playing half so well. And Mary... Wait, so she was playing? She wasn't singing? She had her own instrument? What's happening here? Like, this was actually something I was going to comment on last time, but it wasn't actually, like, a problem last time, which is that I feel like the settings so far are a bit lacking. Like, we don't really get any explanation for where we are in space and what's around us. And for me personally, like, if anything needs to go, that's what I'd like to go. I would much rather have... because I know that, there's some books that spend, here's 20 pages talking about a tree, and I would much rather have this than that. But at the same time, it does leave something to be desired, and in this case, it is becoming a problem because we never described where we were. We haven't described what she didn't even describe what instruments they have. It's not like, oh, look at this like sleek violin. It's just like undisclosed instrument. It's like, is the instrument classified? Why don't we get to know? What are we playing on here? So anyways, So, Elizabeth, easy and unaffected, had been listened to with much more pleasure, though not playing half so well. And Mary, at the end of a long concerto, was glad to purchase praise and gratitude by Scotch and Irish airs, and the request of her younger sisters, who, with some of the Lucases and 2 or 3 officers, joined eagerly in dancing at one end of the room. Officers, like police officers, or just like people in the military, or what does that mean? I also like purchase praise and gratitude. I think I'm glad to purchase praise and gratitude. I think that's fun. All right. 20 paragraphs describing trees of flashbacks. What you flashing back to there, Mako? Mr. Darcy stood near them in silent indignation at such a mode of passing the evening. So Mr. Darcy's just sitting in the corner fuming. He's just like, how dare they have fun? So Mr. Darcy stood near them in silent indignation at such a mode of passing the evening to the exclusion of all conversation. I was too much engrossed by his own thoughts to perceive that Sir William Lucas was his neighbour, till Sir William thus began. Does that mean, like, neighbour as in, like, he didn't know that he moved into the house next to Sir William, or is it literally, like, he didn't notice that Sir William was standing right next to him? Mako, you know. Everybody knows. In that case, I'm assuming it's Lord of the Rings, but I don't know for sure. Alright, so, till Sir William thus began. What a charming amusement for young people this is, Mr. Darcy. There's nothing like dancing after all. I consider it as one of the first refinements of polished societies. Certainly, sir. It has been the advance also of being in vogue amongst the less polished societies of the world. Every savage can dance. And Sir William only smiled. Your friend performs delightfully, he continued after a pause, on seeing Bingley join the group, and I doubt not that you are an adept in the science yourself, Mr. Darcy. You saw me dance at Meryton, I believe, sir. Yes, indeed, and received no inconsiderable pleasure from the sight. Do you often dance at St. James's? Never, sir. I love that. Like, oh yeah, you were great. Loved seeing you dance at that ball. Do you dance often? Never. And we see Bingley being a party animal again. Aw, Wolf says my phone won't let me watch Twitch. That's too bad. Sorry to hear that. Do you not think it would be a proper compliment to the place? It is a compliment which I never pay to any place if I can avoid it. I love that too. Oh my goodness. Oh, like, wouldn't you like to compliment the establishment by gracing it with your graceful feet on the dance floor? I wouldn't like to compliment any establishment that way, sir. The next line, why is that the conclusion? You have a house in town, I conclude. Mr. Darcy bowed. I had once some thoughts of fixing in town myself, for I am fond of superior society, but I did not feel quite certain that the air of London would agree with Lady Lucas. Yeah, they talked about this in the last chapter, didn't they? That didn't he used to live in town, and then he became a knight and was like, I ain't into this anymore. And that's when they were talking about the tolerable fortune. I'm not quite sure. Oh, okay. Well, I'm glad it was simple. I'm glad that you're back, Ghoulish. He paused in hopes of an answer, but his companion was not disposed to make any. And Elizabeth, at that instant, moving towards them, he was struck with the notion of doing a very gallant thing, and called out to her, My dear Miss Eliza, why are you not dancing? Why not... Wait, yeah, why are not you dancing? Why are not you dancing? Mr. Darcy, you must allow me to present this young lady to you as a very desirable partner. Oh, this is fantastic. You cannot refuse to dance, I am sure, when so much beauty is before you. And taking her hand, he would have given it to Mr. Darcy, who, though extremely surprised, was not unwilling to receive it, when she instantly drew back and said with some discomposure to Sir William, Indeed, sir, I have not the least intention of dancing. I entreat you not to suppose that I moved this way in order to beg for a partner. Great answer. Mr. Darcy, with grave propriety, requested to be allowed the honour of her hand, but in vain. Elizabeth was determined, nor did Sir William at all shake her purpose by his attempt at persuasion. You excel so much in the dance, Miss Eliza, that it is cruel to deny... Oh, wait. I guess that is... Yeah, I think that's Sir William. You excel so much in the dance, Miss Eliza, that it is cruel to deny me the happiness of seeing you. And though this gentleman dislikes the amusement in general, he can have no objection, I'm sure, to oblige us for 1/2 hour. I feel like this is just Mr. Darcy's life. I feel like everyone's like, yeah, he's not into it, but he's gonna do it. I invite him to do it. So I'm sure to, let's see, he can have no objection, I'm sure, to oblige us for 1/2 hour. Mr. Darcy is all politeness, said Elizabeth, smiling. Amazing. He is indeed, but considering the inducement, my dear Miss Eliza, we cannot wonder at his complaisance, for who would object to such a partner? So, did he pick up on her sarcasm there, or did he not? I think he's just saying, yeah, he's kind of rude, but, he can't refuse you. You're a hottie. Elizabeth looked archly and turned away. Her resistance had not injured her with the gentleman, and he was thinking of her with some complacency, when thus accosted by Miss Bingley. I thought it said Mr. Bingley for a second there. That would have been funnier. And thus accosted by Miss Bingley. I can guess the subject of your reverie. I should imagine not. You are considering how insupportable it would be to pass many evenings in this manner, in such society, and indeed, I am quite of your opinion. I was never more annoyed. The insipidity, and yet the noise, the nothingness, and yet the self-importance of all these people. What would I give to hear your strictures on them? That is Miss Bingley speaking, right? Another setting thing. We can't always know who's talking. And I think this is Mr. Darcy still. Your conjecture is totally wrong, I assure you. My mind was most agreeably engaged. I have been meditating on the very great pleasure which a pair of fine eyes in the face of a pretty woman can bestow. Yep, again, seems contemplative. Just seems like he wants to be in the corner and be with his own thoughts. Miss Bingley immediately fixed her eyes on his face, and desired he would tell her what lady had the credit of inspiring such reflections. Mr. Darcy replied with great intrepidity, Miss Elizabeth Bennet. Miss Elizabeth Bennet, replied Miss Bingley. I am all astonishment. How long has she been such a favourite? I pray when I am to wish you joy. So, again, setting thing. I thought Elizabeth was standing right next to them. Elizabeth and Sir William and Mr. Darcy are all talking. And then I thought Miss Bingley came up and came to say hi to everybody. But I feel like Elizabeth shouldn't be hearing this. So it seems like it's just them now. So what, unless like, oh, okay, so it does say that she turned away here. Okay, I see. So that turned away is like she walked away. I guess I was thinking of it as like, she just like turns her face away. Alright. And pray, when am I to wish you joy? That is exactly the question which I expected you to ask. A lady's imagination is very rapid. It jumps from admiration to love, from love to matrimony in a moment. I knew you would be wishing me joy. Nay, if you are so serious about it, I shall consider the matter as absolutely settled. You'll have a charming mother-in-law indeed, and of course she will be always at Pemberley with you. He listened to her with perfect indifference, while she chose to entertain herself in this manner, and as his composure convinced her that all was safe, her wit flowed long. Interesting. So this seems to be a reference, or like a switcheroo of the beginning of the chapter. The beginning of the chapter was Miss Lucas saying to Jane, or saying to Liz about Jane, like, those guys, like, they don't know, like, what you're thinking. They don't know what's going on. So you gotta ramp it up. You gotta ramp up your love so that they get that you're into them. And then maybe they'll be extra into you when you do that. And it seems like Mr. Darcy is like, I know your game. I know that you guys do that. I know that you're gonna laugh super hard at my jokes because you just are like, I want to get married right away. I ain't falling for it. Alright. Chapter 7. Mr. Bennet's property consisted almost entirely in an estate of $2,000 a year, which unfortunately for his daughters was entailed in default of heirs male on a distant relation, and their mother's fortune, though ample for her situation in life, could but ill supply the deficiency of his. Her father had been an attorney in Meryton, and had left her £4,000. I don't feel like I understood that paragraph. So Mr. Bingley was $5,000 a year, right? And so we're finding that Mr. Bennet's $2,000 a year. So he's doing okay, but he's not like super rich, I think. But then when he dies, it's not going to go to his daughters. It's going to go to a distant relative who's male. And then it sounds like Mrs. Bennet has a fortune too. And like it's pretty good for where she is, but it's not enough to help Mr. Bennet's. It doesn't hold them up. Okay. Gotcha. Nick again said, I think it means that due to reasons, the daughters don't stand to inherit much of anything. If anything. Gotcha. She had a sister married to Mr. Phillips. She had a sister married to Mr. Phillips, who had been a clerk to their father and succeeded him in the business, and a brother settled in London in a respectable line of trade. Hang on, I was distracted by the notification. Stop giving me notifications. And that wasn't a Discord notification, FYI. It was just something on my phone, on my computer. I'm using a different computer than my normal one. So she has a sister married to a Mr. Phillips, who had been a clerk to their father, to the attorney, succeeded him in the attorney business, and a brother settled in London in a special line of trade. Okay. The village of Longbourn was only 1 mile from Meryton. A most convenient distance for the young ladies, who were usually tempted thither 3 or 4 times a week, to pay their duty to their aunt and to a milliner's shop just over the way. The two youngest of the family, Catherine and Lydia, were particularly frequent in these attentions. So I guess Mary must be the middle one. So I think it goes Jane, Elizabeth, Mary, Catherine, Lydia. The two youngest of the family, Catherine and Lydia, were particularly frequent in these attentions. Their minds were more vacant than their sisters', and when nothing better offered, a walk to Meryton was necessary to amuse their morning hours and furnish conversation for the evening. Oh, that's a nice phrase. Furnish conversation. We gotta find something to talk about. Let's put a sofa in this conversation, you know. And however bare of news the country in general might be, they always contrived to learn some from their aunt. At present, indeed, they were all supplied both with news and happiness by the recent arrival of a militia regiment in the neighborhood. It was to remain the whole winter, and Meryton was the headquarters. Okay, so those might have been the officers earlier. Their visits to Mrs. Phillips were now productive of the most interesting intelligence. Every day added something to their knowledge of the officers' names and connections. Their lodgings were not long a secret, and at length they began to know the officers themselves. Mr. Phillips visited them all, and this opened to his nieces a source of felicity unknown before. They could talk of nothing but officers and Mr. Bingley's large fortune, the mention of which gave animation to their mother, was worthless in their eyes when opposed to the regimentals of an ensign. After listening one morning to their effusions on the subject, Mr. Bennet coolly observed, "Among that I can collect by your manner of talking, you must be two of the silliest girls in the country. I have suspected it some time, but I am now convinced." Catherine was disconcerted and made no answer, but Lydia, with perfect indifference, continued to express her admiration of Captain Carter, and her hope of seeing him in the course of the day as he was going the next morning to London.
What's up, kitty? What's going on? He kind of sat up a little bit. And now he's sitting back down. You were so cute, baby.
Can you hear my computer when it starts being like, I'm struggling? I don't know why this computer does that. It's supposed to be good for this. Okay, that's good. So Mako says, I haven't heard anything, and Ghoulish says, yep, I think we have established that Ghoulish has some Vulcan hearing, so... Yeah, that's true. Sometimes even great computers still require the extra effort, huh? It's very strange, though, because my Mac that I always stream on, or that I always used to stream on, that has no storage in it, and I think is not advertised for this, never does this. So I don't know what this computer's problem is. Ghoulish, my hearing is freakish. Could you even say ghoulish? Maybe not. Maybe ghoulish hearing isn't a thing. Alright. I'm astonished, my dear, said Mrs. Bennet, that you should be so ready to think your own children silly. If I wished to think slightingly of anybody's children, it should not be of my own, however. If my children are silly, I must hope to be always sensible of it. Yes, but as it happens, they are all of them very clever. That is the only point, I flatter myself, on which we do not agree. I had hoped that our sentiments coincided in every particular, but I must so far differ from you as to think our two youngest daughters uncommonly foolish. Oh, Mr. Bennet. I never know what to think of him. Like, sometimes he seems like he's like, yeah, my daughters, like, they're basic, they're kind of dumb. Or if it's, like, said lovingly. If it's like, yeah, they're silly, but I love them to death, you know, that kind of thing. That's fair. Mako says he has his volume pretty low. That could be the case. My dear Mr. Bennet, you must not expect such girls to have the sense of their father and mother. When they get to our age, I dare say they will not think about officers any more than we do. I remember the time when I liked a red coat myself very well, and indeed, so I do still at my heart. And if a smart young colonel with 5,000 or 6,000 a year should want one of my girls, I shall not say nay to him. And I thought Colonel Forster looked very becoming the other night at Sir William's in his regimentals. Mamma, cried Lydia, my aunt says that Colonel Forster and Captain Carter do not go so often to Miss Watson's as they did when they first came. She sees them now very often standing in Clark's library. What? Is this important information, or is this supposed to just convey that she just talks, like, kind of stalks him and talks about anything about him? And she's just like, oh my goodness, I heard that Colonel Forster, that he, like, doesn't go to Miss Watson's as much as he used to. And, they're standing in the library a lot. I guess it's because, like, Miss Watson was a potential lover, and so I guess it's saying, like, oh, I might have a chance because he's not hanging out with Miss Watson as much as he used to. That's probably it. Norman, I had to tune out there for a bit, but I'm back. Anybody married yet? That's awesome. No, nobody married yet. Papa Bennett is a G. I hope we could agree on everything, but alas, our kids are stupid, and I will not lie. Oh, that's a great way to put it. Mrs. Bennet was prevented replying by the entrance of the footman with a note for Miss Bennet. It came from Netherfield, and the servant waited for an answer. Mrs. Bennet's eyes sparkled with pleasure, and she was eagerly calling out while her daughter read. Well, Jane, who is it from? What is it about? What does he say? Well, Jane, make haste and tell us. Make haste, my love. It's from Miss Bingley, said Jane, and then read it aloud. For the rest of our lives, for a whole day's tete-a-tete, between two women can never end without a quarrel. Come as soon as you can on the receipt of this. My brother and the gentleman are to dine with the officers. Yours ever, Caroline Bingley. What does that mean? Does that mean, like, they fought earlier and she's like, yeah, just come say hi, like, of no hard feelings? Or is it like, come over so we can fight? Come over because I want to argue with her. With you. I can't tell. Oh, I think I missed some. Okay, let's yeah, I guess because I had it like that, I thought it was the end. Okay. My dear friend, if you are not so compassionate as to dine day to day with Louisa and me, we shall be in danger of hating each other. For the rest of our lives, for a whole day's tete-a-tete between two women can never end without a quarrel. Come as soon as you can on the receipt of this. My brother and the gentleman are to dine with the officers. Yours ever, Caroline Bingley. That does make more sense. So it's basically, she basically sent her a letter saying, "Come to dinner, or I'll hate you forever." And I think that's what was going on. Green has to head out, but it was great to have you, Green. See you next time, or in the VOD, perhaps. Okay. With the officers? Cried Lydia. I wonder my aunt did not tell us of that. Dining out, said Mrs. Bennet. That is very unlucky. Can I have the carriage? Said Jane. No, my dear, you had better go on horseback, because it seems likely to rain, and then you must stay all night. That would be a good scheme, said Elizabeth, if you are sure that they would not offer to send her home. I can't talk talking. But the gentleman will have Mr. Bingley's chaise to go to Meryton, and the hearse have no horses to theirs. I'd much rather go in the coach. But, my dear, your father cannot spare the horses, I am sure. They are wanted in the farm, Mr. Bennet, are not they? They are wanted in the farm much oftener than I can get them. But if you've got them today, said Elizabeth, my mother's purpose will be answered. She did at last extort from her father an acknowledgment that the horses were engaged. Jane was therefore obliged to go on horseback, and her mother attended... The horses are engaged, so she went on horseback. I guess it's like... Do you have the carriage horses and then the horseback horses? Is that what's going on here? I guess that makes sense, because, like, I've seen, like, at the fair, they'll have, like, Clydesdales that pull the carriages, but, you know, you don't really ride Clydesdales that often. You ride other horses that are much sleeker. About time something got engaged. Amazing. And the horses lived happily ever after. They didn't have to deal with all this. Okay. And her mother attended her to the door with many cheerful prognostics of a bad day. She's cheerfully proclaiming it's going to be a bad day. That's amazing. Her hopes were answered. Jane had not been gone long before it rained hard. Her sisters were uneasy for her, but her mother was delighted. The rain continued the whole evening without intermission. Jane certainly could not come back. Wasn't it Mrs. Bennet who had a problem with it, and Elizabeth who was like, that could be good? Yeah, like, this is Mrs. Bennet, right? And she's, like, fighting? Unless I'm reading it wrong. It could be someone else talking, and I'm not aware. That was a lucky idea of mine indeed, said Mrs. Bennet more than once, as if the credit of making it rain were all her own. Till the next morning, however, she was not aware of all the felicity of her contrivance. Breakfast was scarcely over when a servant from Netherfield brought the following note for Elizabeth. This is something I didn't mention in my recap, but we decided that Netherfield was the Nether in Minecraft. Which makes this so much funnier. It's like, well, you gotta spend the night in the Nether, Jane. Sorry. What is that symbol down here? I guess that's the, like, her initials? I don't even know what letter that is. Yeah, so weird that upon hearing a servant of Netherfield, I immediately picture some kind of goat man. Amazing. It's the Nether in Minecraft, and they just have goat servants. Love it. My dearest Lizzie, I find myself very unwell this morning, which I suppose is to be imputed to my getting wet through yesterday. My kind friends will not hear of my returning home till I am better. They insist also on my seeing Mr. Jones. Therefore do not be alarmed if you should hear of his having been to me. And, excepting a sore throat and a headache, there is not much the matter with me. I guess Mr. Jones must be the doctor. Yours... E.C. It looks like E.C., but I assume it would have to be J.C. Well, no, it's not even J.C., because Bennett is their last name. Yeah, so just eldritch noises, I guess. Alright. Well, my dear, said Mr. Bennet, when Elizabeth had read the note aloud, if your daughter should have a dangerous fit of illness, if she should die, it will be a comfort to know that it was all in pursuit of Mr. Bingley and under your orders. Oh my goodness. I don't know if he's saying that, like, I assume that's sarcastic, like, well, like, our daughter might die. Are you happy? Like, at least she's with Mr. Bingley. At least she's trying to get her some. Oh, it was an ampersand. Really? That is a wacky ampersand. Okay. So, like, yours and C? Is that what that would mean? Huh. It says I cranked my volume a while ago and only suddenly realized this buzzing is coming from my headphones, not the house. So I guess I can hear your PC going, that's too bad. I don't think there's much I can really do about it. It's like everything on this scene is being used. And like I said, like this computer seems to start buzzing at like the smallest tick. How annoying is it? How big of a deal is it? If your daughter should have a dangerous fit of illness, if she should die, it would be a comfort to know that it is all in pursuit of Mr. Bingley and under your orders. Oh, I am not at all afraid of her dying. People do not die of little trifling colds. She will be taken good care of. As long as she stays there, it is all very well. I would go and see her, if I could have the carriage. I would go and see her, if I could have those horses to pull the carriage. Not much of an issue at all, says Val, and I don't mind, says Death Said. I didn't know you were here, Death Said. It's great to have you. Alright. Elizabeth, feeling really anxious, was determined to go to her, though the carriage was not to be had. As she was no horsewoman, walking was her only alternative. She declared her resolution. I hope that there's a scene of Mr. Darcy teaching her how to ride horses later. How can you be so silly, cried her mother, as to think of such a thing in all this dirt? You will not be fit to be seen when you get there. I shall be very fit to see Jane, which is all I want. Oh, you're gonna see Mr. Darcy. You're not just gonna see Jane, I assure you. Is this a hint to me, Lizzie, said her father, to send for the horses? I think it is. And kind of hilarious that he'll do it for Lizzie, but not Mrs. Bennet, but makes sense, because she is established as the favorite. We've got horsewomen now, we got the horse girls! Or I guess Nora says centaur. I went horse girls, you went centaur. I guess everybody back then kind of had to be a horse girl. Because you didn't have... I mean, you had carriages. So I guess those are your cars of the day.
Right, kitty.
Can you see him if I do it? I guess you can just see some fluff.
You can just see some fluff.
Alright. No, indeed. I do not wish to avoid the walk. The distance is nothing when one has a motive. Only 3 miles. I shall be back by dinner. I admire the activity of your benevolence. Oh. I admire the activity of your benevolence, observed Mary, but every impulse of feeling should be guided by reason, and in my opinion, exertion should always be in proportion to what is required. We will go as far as Meryton with you, said Catherine and Lydia. Elizabeth accepted their company, and the 3 young ladies set off together. They want to see their officers again, I'm sure. They're like, yeah, we'll go to Meryton. We can meet Captain Forster, or whatever his title was. If we make haste, said Lydia as they walked along, perhaps we may see something of Captain Carter before he goes. In Meryton they parted. The two youngest repaired to the lodgings of one of the officers' wives, and Elizabeth continued her walk alone, crossing field after field at a quick pace, jumping over stiles and springing over puddles with impatient activity, and finding herself at last within view of the house, with weary ankles, dirty stockings, and a face glowing with the warmth of exercise. And she was shown into the breakfast parlor, where all but Jane were assembled. So she goes in just to see Jane, and she sees everybody but Jane. And where her appearance created a great deal of surprise, that she should have walked 3 miles so early in the day in such dirty weather, and by herself, was almost incredible to Mrs. Hurst and Miss Bingley, and Elizabeth was convinced that they held her in contempt for it. She was so that's calling out more strongly, like, she is sure that they hate her for it, and, like, there's no indication that they hate her. They're just like, what's going on here? Why'd you walk all the way here? She was received, however, very politely by them. Yeah, exactly. It's the, like, I don't remember, like, I haven't actually watched the movie, but I've seen the meme where it's like, hi, how's it going? Like, great day, isn't it? They all hated me. Kind of what it feels like. She was received, however, very politely by them, and in their brother's manners there was something better than politeness. There was good humor and kindness. Mr. Darcy said very little, and Mr. Hurst nothing at all. The former was divided between admiration and the brilliancy which exercise had given to her complexion, and doubt as to the occasion justifying her coming so far alone. The latter was thinking only of his breakfast. That's awesome. I love that Mr. Darcy's like, like, I don't know if I should, like, admire how, like, cute she is when she's all, like, hot and sweaty, or if, like, it was worth her coming, like, this far. Like, she didn't need to do that. And then Mr. Hurst is just like, I want pancakes. Like, mood. Aw, Boople, thanks. That Boople says, wow, what a neat story channel. Thanks for joining us, Boople. It's great to have you. Her inquiries after her sister were not very favorably answered. Miss Bennet had slept ill, and though up, is that supposed to be, like, threw up? And though up, oh no, it is supposed to be, like, though she's awake, okay. And though up, was very feverish and not well enough to leave her room. Elizabeth was glad to be taken to her immediately, and Jane, who had only been withheld by the fear of giving alarm or inconvenience, from expressing in her note how much she longed for such a visit, was delighted at her entrance. She was not equal, however, to much conversation, and when Miss Bingley left them together, could attempt little beside expressions of gratitude for the extraordinary kindness she was treated with. Elizabeth silently attended her. Hang on a sec. Okay. When breakfast was over, they were joined by the sisters, and Elizabeth began to like them herself. So she goes from thinking they hate her and kind of hating them herself to being like, you know what, they're okay. And Elizabeth began to like them herself when she saw how much affection and solicitude they showed for Jane. The apothecary came, and having examined his patient, said, as might be supposed, that she had caught a violent cold, and that they must endeavour to get the better of it, advised her to return to bed, and promised her some draughts. The advice was followed readily, for the feverish symptoms increased, and her head ached acutely. Elizabeth did not quit her room for a moment, nor were the other ladies often absent. The gentlemen being out, they had in fact nothing to do elsewhere. So I guess we're seeing that even though, like, Elizabeth, she got some prejudices, and she's got some spunk in her. She is a very caring sister. She does She walks all the way just to come, be at her sister's side. Alright. When the clock struck 3, Elizabeth felt that she must go, and very unwillingly said so. Miss Bingley offered her the carriage, and she only wanted a little pressing to accept it. When Jane testified such concern in parting with her that Miss Bingley was obliged to convert the offer to the chaise into an invitation to remain at Netherfield for the present, Elizabeth most thankfully consented, and a servant was dispatched to Longbourn to acquaint the family with her stay and bring back a supply of clothes. Gotta send another goat man. Alright. Chapter 8. At 5 o'clock, the two ladies retired to dress, and at 6:30, Elizabeth was summoned to dinner. To the civil inquiries which then poured in, and amongst which she had the pleasure of distinguishing the much superior solicitude of Mr. Bingley's, she could not make a very favourable answer. Jane was by no means better. The sisters, on hearing this, repeated 3 or 4 times how much they were grieved, how shocking it was to have a bad cold, and excessively they disliked being ill themselves, and then thought no more of the matter, and their indifference towards Jane, when not immediately before them, restored Elizabeth to the enjoyment of all her original dislike. So she went right back to hating them. Hang on a sec. I don't know if I know what solicitude means. Or if it's even pronounced that way. Instead of being solicitous, anxiety or concern, causes of anxiety or care, an attitude of expressing excessive attentiveness. Okay, that's probably what it is, that he's much more attentive. Okay, that is correct. Solicitude. It looks like I could also do solicitude with a Y. All right. Their brother, indeed, was the only one of the party whom she could regard with any complacency. His anxiety for Jane was evident, and his attentions to herself most pleasing, and they prevented her feeling herself so much an intruder as she believed she was, considered by the others. They prevented her feeling herself so much an intruder as she believed she was considered by the others. She had very little notice from any of them. Miss Bingley was engrossed by Mr. Darcy, her sister scarcely less so, and as for Mr. Hurst, by whom Elizabeth sat, he was an indolent man, who lived only to eat, drink, and play at cards, who, when he found her prefer a plain dish to a ragout, had nothing to say to her. What does indolent mean? It makes me think of insolent, but I don't know if that's the same thing. Having or showing a disposition to avoid exertion, slothful. Okay, so he's just kind of lazy dude who likes his food. Mako, I was right, just not fast enough to type it. Fair. I hate that feeling. Oh, I love how your name looks on the actual screen with the fancy typing boople. Very, very fancy. Okay. When dinner was over, she returned directly to Jane, and Miss Bingley began abusing her as soon as she was out of the room. Her manners were pronounced to be very bad indeed, a mixture of pride and impertinence. She had no conversations, no style, no taste, no beauty. Mrs. Hurst thought the same, and added, wait, so is this something Liz is knowing, or is this something that the narrator's telling us? And then when it says her manners like are pronounced, does that mean Miss Bingley, or does that mean Miss Bingley saying that about Jane? I think it's Miss Bingley saying it about Jane, because the last sentence is Mrs. Hurst thought the same. So I think they're kind of bashing on her, and we're finding that maybe Elizabeth's prejudices are correct. She has nothing, in short, to recommend her, but being an excellent walker. That sounds more like they're talking about Elizabeth, because she's the one who walked all the way. Maybe they are. Like, as we've established, I get confused as to who's talking and who they're talking about. She's nothing, in short, to recommend her, but being an excellent walker. I shall never forget her appearance this morning. She really looked almost wild. Okay, so that's definitely Elizabeth that they're talking about. I guess, that was the voice I was giving, Miss Bingley. Whoops. She did indeed, Louisa. I could hardly keep my countenance. Very nonsensical to come at all. Why must she be scampering about the country because her sister had a cold? Her hair so untidy, so blousy. Should I give Louisa a Valley Girl voice? They're seeming like they might be a bit catty. Yes, and her petticoat. I hope you saw her petticoat. 6 inches deep in mud, I'm absolutely certain. And the gown, which had been let down to hide it, not doing its office. Your picture may be very exact, Louisa, said Bingley, but this wasn't all lost upon me. I thought Miss Elizabeth Bennet looked remarkably well when she came into the room this morning. Her dirty petticoat quite escaped my notice. Wait, I thought they were bashing her, but now she seems to be defending her? Not sure. You observed it, Mr. Darcy, I'm sure, said Miss Bingley, and I'm inclined to think that you would not wish to see your sister make such an exhibition. Certainly not. To walk 3 miles, or 4 miles, or 5 miles, or whatever it is, above her ankles in dirt, and alone, quite alone. What could she mean by it? It seems to me to show an abominable sort of conceited independence, a most country town indifference of decorum. I like the idea that, like, they're standing right outside the door that Elizabeth and Jane are in, of the room that they're in. And, like, Mr. Darcy is just looking longingly at the door. He's like, oh, yeah, she sucks. Like, I want to be with her. I guess that was Louisa. See, confused again. It shows an affection for her sister that is very pleasing, said Bingley. And now they're saying nice things. I don't understand. Maybe it is all Miss Bingley. I don't know. I'm confused. I'm afraid, Mr. Darcy, observed Miss Bingley in a half whisper, that this adventure has rather affected your admiration of her fine eyes. Interesting. Not at all, he replied. They were brightened by the exercise. A short pause followed his speech, and Mrs. Hurst began again. I have an excessive regard for Jane Bennet. She's really a very sweet girl, and I wish with all my heart she were well settled. But with such a father and mother, and such low connections, I am afraid there's no chance of it. Ah, okay. So they don't think that Mr. Bingley's gonna go for her. Like, he knows the game, and he wants like a rich wife potentially too. And I don't know who's talking. I think it's Darcy. I think I've heard you say that their uncle is an attorney in Meryton. Yes, and they have another who lives somewhere near Cheapside. That is capital, added her sister, and they both laughed heartily. If they had uncles enough to fill all Cheapside, cried Bingley, it would not make them one jot less agreeable. But it must very materially lessen their chance of marrying men of any consideration in the world. I'm not sure what that means. I guess he's just saying, like, they're not marriage material. Like, they're poor, so they're not marriage material. Ghoulish says, so he knows the game and he's gonna play it. Curious what you mean by that. Like he knows that Bingley's gonna go for the rich ladies, and so he's like, yeah, I like her, I don't care. I'm not sure. To this speech, Bingley made no answer, but his sisters gave it their hearty assent, and indulged. Is Mr. Bingley there? What? Like I said, it seemed like they just walked outside the door, and it's just the three of them hanging out. Who is where? To this speech, Bingley made no answer, but his sisters gave it their hearty assent and indulged their mirth for some time at the expense of their dear friend's vulgar relations. With a renewal of tenderness, however, they repaired to her room on leaving the dining parlour, and sat with her till summoned to coffee. I love the idea of just, like, we could use that phrase today, of just, like, you don't have your caffeine, and so you're like, I'm summoned to coffee. Mako says, that said, it's gotten too late, gotta get up early, have fun, everybody. Well, it was great to have you. With a renewal of tenderness, however, they repaired to her room on leaving the dining parlour, and sat with her till summoned to coffee. She was still very poorly, and Elizabeth would not quit her at all, till late in the evening, when she had comfort of seeing her asleep, when it appeared to her rather right than pleasant that she should go downstairs herself. On entering the drawing room, she found the whole party at loo, and was immediately invited to join them. But suspecting them to be playing high, she declined it, and making her sister the excuse, said she would amuse herself for the short time she could stay below with a book. Mr. Hurst looked at her with astonishment. Do you prefer reading to cards? Said he. That is rather singular. Miss Eliza Bennet, said Miss Bingley, despises cards. She's a great reader, and has no pleasure in anything else. I deserve neither such praise nor such censure, cried Elizabeth. I am not a great reader, and I have a pleasure in many things. Weird flex to be like, excuse me, I suck at reading. In nursing your sister, I'm sure you have pleasure, said Bingley, and I hope it will soon be increased by seeing her quite well. See, you can't use Bingley, because I thought it was the sister. In nursing your sister, I'm sure you have pleasure, said Bingley, and I hope it will soon be increased by seeing her quite well. Elizabeth thanked him from her heart, and then walked towards a table where a few books were lying. He immediately offered to fetch her others, all that his library afforded. And I wish my collection were larger for your benefit and my own credit. Oh no, that's him. And I wish my collection were larger for your benefit and my own credit. But I am an idle fellow, and though I have not many, I have more than I ever look into. Elizabeth assured him that she could suit herself perfectly with those in the room. I am astonished, said Miss Bingley, that my father should have left so small a collection of books. What a beautiful library you have at Pemberley, Mr. Darcy. It ought to be good, he replied. That has been the work of many generations. And then you added so much to it yourself. You're always buying books. I cannot comprehend the neglect of a family library in such days as these. Neglect? I'm sure you neglect nothing that can add to the beauties of that noble place. Charles, when you build your house, I wish it may be half as delightful as Pemberley. I wish it may. But I would really advise you to make your purchase in that neighbourhood, and take Pemberley for a kind of model. And there is not a finer county in England than Derbyshire. With all my heart, I will buy Pemberley itself if Darcy will sell it. I am talking of possibilities, Charles. See, I don't know who's talking. I guess that's Bingley. I am talking of possibilities, Charles. Upon my word, Caroline, I should think it more possible to get Pemberley by purchase than by imitation. Interesting. That's kind of a neat line. So it's so awesome and grand that you can't imitate it. That it's really expensive, and even as expensive as it is, it would be easier to get by buying it than trying to replicate it. Elizabeth was so much caught by what passed as to leave her very little attention for her book, and soon, laying it wholly aside, she drew near the card table and stationed herself between Mr. Bingley and his eldest sister to observe the game. Is Miss Darcy much grown since the spring? Said Miss Bingley. Will she be as tall as I am? I think she will. She is now about Miss Elizabeth Bennet's height, or rather taller. How I long to see her again. I never met with anybody who delighted me so much. Such a countenance, such manners, and so extremely accomplished for her age. Her performance on the pianoforte is exquisite. It is amazing to me, said Bingley, how young ladies can have patience to be so very accomplished as they all are. All young ladies accomplished? My dear Charles, what do you mean? Okay, so I was wondering who Charles was, if he was Hurst or Bingley. So he is Bingley. Okay. Yes, all of them, I think. They all paint tables, cover screens, and knit purses. I scarcely know anyone who cannot do all this, and I'm sure I never heard a young lady spoken of for the first time without being informed that she was very accomplished. This seems to be nice. I'm starting to see why he's so agreeable. That's a pretty nice thing to say. Unless I am missing some context. Oh, Beau. Sweetie. I don't know, because I guess he could be saying, like, especially with that last sentence, like, without being informed she was very accomplished, it could be saying it's fake. It could be like, oh, like, everybody tells me, like, that they're accomplished, but it doesn't mean that they are. That could be it. Oh, baby. I don't know how annoying it is, so I don't want to start up reading again while he's still coughing. You done, sweetie? Okay. I think he's done. Oh, nope. Alright. Oh, kitty. Oh, kitty, baby. Alright, your list of the common extent of accomplishments, said Darcy, has too much truth. The word is applied to many a woman who deserves it, no otherwise than by netting a purse or covering a screen. But I am very far from agreeing with you in your estimation of ladies in general. I cannot boast of knowing more than half a dozen in the whole range of my acquaintance that are really accomplished. I can't tell if this is, like, super insulting and misogynistic, or if it's what I was saying before, that it's like, oh yeah, everybody says that they're accomplished and they're trying to talk themselves up, but not a lot of them are who they say they are. Not a lot of them are nearly as accomplished as they purport. Oh, kitty. You're over here now. I don't know what covering a screen means. It makes me think of, like, embroidery, like covering an embroidery hoop, but I don't know if that's what it is. Kitty, you want to come here? What you doing, baby? What you doing, baby cat? Oh, sweetie. You seem kind of restless. You want to come here? I guess I can if you want.
Nor I am sure, said Miss Bingley. Then, observed Elizabeth, you must comprehend a great deal in your idea of an accomplished woman. Yes, I do comprehend a great deal in it. No. Oh, certainly, cried his faithful assistant. No one can be really esteemed accomplished. Who is this assistant? Is he a random goat servant, or is this, like, referring to Miss Bingley? Oh, certainly, cried his faithful assistant. No one can be really esteemed accomplished who does not greatly surpass what is usually met. A woman must have a thorough knowledge of music, singing, drawing, dancing, and the modern languages to deserve the word. And besides all this, she must possess a certain something in her air and manner of walking, the tone of her voice, her address and expressions, or the word will be half deserved. I'm guessing Elizabeth fits all these things. I think, heard her sing. So I think we heard her sing. And I mean, it is kind of fair. Like, if everybody says that it's kind of the situation of, if everybody says they're special, nobody is. So if everybody is like, I'm accomplished, then it kind of means that nobody is. What was the other thing I was gonna say? Oh yeah, and I guess it could be a weird compliment in a way that it's like, oh yeah, all ladies, they all are up here, and so they all raise the bar. Like, the bar's raised because everybody's up here. And so the ones that are accomplished are up here, you know? All this she must possess, added Darcy. And all this she must yet add something more substantial in the improvement of her mind by extensive reading. I'm no longer surprised at your knowing only 6 accomplished women. I rather wonder now at your knowing any. I don't know if that was Bingley or Elizabeth. Are you so severe upon your own sex as to doubt the possibility of all this? I never saw such a woman. I never saw such capacity and taste and application and elegance as you describe united. Mrs. Hurst and Miss Bingley both cried out against the injustice of her implied doubt. Okay, so that was Elizabeth. And were both protesting that they knew many women who answered this description, when Mr. Hurst called them to order, with bitter complaints of their inattention and what was going forward. As all conversation was thereby at an end, Elizabeth soon afterward left the room. Interesting, yeah. So she's not hyping herself up. She's not going, oh yeah, I do all those things. She's like, I don't think anybody does all those things, man. Like, you're ideal, lady, too ideal. Like, nobody's gonna meet your list of requirements, man. The list of requirements in the 1800s are, let's see. She knows music, singing, drawing, dancing, modern languages. She has to walk nice. She's got to have a nice tone of voice. And she got to read. That's our list of what the ideal woman in the 1800s. Norman, me eating potato chips in bed covered in crumbs. A lady must be most accomplished. Amazing. Eliza Bennet, said Miss Bingley, when the door was closed on her, is one of those young ladies who seek to recommend themselves to the other sex by undervaluing their own, and with many men, I dare say, it succeeds. But in my opinion, it is a paltry device, a very mean art. I mean, I guess it's possible, but I don't think that's what she was doing. I think we're kind of seeing the similarities between Darcy and Elizabeth, that they both are maybe more realistic or pessimistic, and then they're kind of going like, Darcy's going, so many people call themselves accomplished, but they're not really. And Elizabeth is going, your standards are too high, man. Like, nobody's gonna fit your ideal woman. Undoubtedly, replied Darcy, to whom this remark was chiefly addressed. There is meanness in all the arts which ladies sometimes condescend. There is meanness in all the arts which ladies sometimes condescend to employ for captivation. Whatever bears affinity to cunning is despicable. Not sure what he means there. Oh, I guess he's saying, like, if she's, yeah, like, when ladies try to use feminine wiles, I don't like those feminine wiles. So that's deceitful. That's cunning. That's mean. I don't want to be toyed with. Yeah, totally. Ghoulish says, honestly, I'm down for just music, singing, nice voice, and likes reading. Maybe I'm just easy to please. Well, if you meet a woman you like well enough, standards are bendable. Exactly. I mean, I think that's what we're finding, you know. We're gonna find out in this story that either Elizabeth is going to fit all those categories after all, or she won't, but he'll be like, she's still great anyways. She's still great, but I can't admit it. Miss Bingley was not so entirely satisfied with his reply as to continue the subject. Elizabeth joined them again, only to say that her sister was worse, and that she could not leave her. Bingley urged Mr. Jones's being sent for immediately, while his sisters, convinced that no country advice could be of any service, recommended an express to town for one of the most eminent physicians. This she would not hear of, but she was not so unwilling to comply with her brother's proposal, and it was settled that Mr. Jones would be sent for early in the morning, if Miss Bennet were not decidedly better. Bingley was quite uncomfortable. His sisters declared that they were miserable. They solaced their wretchedness, however, by duets after supper, while he could find no better relief of his feelings than by giving his housekeeper directions that every possible attention might be paid to the sick lady and her sister. Bingley is a nice lady. Lady. I meant man. Why did I say lady? I guess we've been talking about ladies too much. Bingley is a nice dude. I find him agreeable. I see why he's agreeable. And I do think it's hilarious that the sisters are like, we're miserable. And it's like, you just have my future wife and her sister in the house. They're sick and they don't come out of the room. We're miserable. Okay, what time is it? Okay, it's midnight. Let's see how long the next chapter is. I think we can do at least one more. How are you guys feeling? You tired? You want to do another one? You want to save it? Here, I'll give you a shot of the kitty. Oh, there he is. So cute, little Beau, hiding his face in the chair. Just a pretty little baby. Norman says, I'm easy either way. Coolidge says, I'm down for whatever. Nice. I guess I'll read another one then. Glad we're all undecided. We're all decidedly undecided. Alright. Chapter 9. Elizabeth passed the chief of the night in her sister's room, and in the morning had the pleasure of being able to send a tolerable answer. What is the obsession with tolerable in this country? Or not this country, but this time, more like. I wonder what word we use that's similar to that. Let's see. So Elizabeth passed the chief of the night in her sister's room. In the morning, had the pleasure of being able to send a tolerable answer to the inquiries which she very early received from Mr. Bingley by a housemaid, and sometime afterwards from the two elegant ladies who waited on his sisters. In spite of his amendment, however, she requested to have a note sent to Longbourn, desiring her mother to visit Jane, and form her own judgment of her situation. The note was immediately dispatched, and its contents as quickly complied with. Mrs. Bennet, accompanied by her two youngest girls, reached Netherfield soon after the family breakfast. Had she found Jane in any apparent danger, Mrs. Bennet would have been very miserable, but being satisfied on seeing
on seeing her that her illness was not alarming, she had no wish of her recovering immediately, as her restoration to health would probably remove her from Netherfield. I'm just imagining, like, all the tricks that kids do to, like, get out of school to seem sick. I'm just imagining, like, Mrs. Bennet, like, handing her those tricks or, like, whispering them to her and stuff. Darn, the way it was used earlier in the book suggests something else. He earned a tolerable fortune. Oh, actually, you might be right. I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to. I mean, I think it's just like she had an okay answer. Like it seems like, and it's the same thing I think with the fortune. It's like it's not a great fortune. He's not super rich, but it's like it's pretty decent. And I guess it's the same thing here. Like she gave a decent answer. It's not the most amazing answer ever. It's not a terrible answer. It's just like it's decent. It's just not a word we use that often, and in these contexts, so it's funny. Is this pre or post germ theory? Good question. Yeah. Are they thinking it's a miasma situation or a germ situation or a humorous situation? They have been talking about good humor, so it might be the humorous time. It was, I don't know when the book itself takes place, but it was written in, first published, oh, we can't see that, in 1813. So, if you want to look up, in 1813, if they knew about germs, you could. Yes, please do. That's a good point. Yeah, you might not want to fake being sick if they're gonna bleed you. Very true. Very true. Anyways. She would not listen, therefore, to her daughter's proposal of being carried home. Neither did the apothecary, who arrived about the same time, think it was at all advisable. After sitting a little while with Jane on Miss Bingley's appearance and invitation, the mother and 3 daughters all attended her into the breakfast parlor. Bingley met them with hopes that Mrs. Bennet had not found Miss Bennet worse than she expected. "Indeed I have, sir," was her answer. "She's a great deal too ill to be moved. Mr. Jones says we must not think of moving her. We must trespass a little longer on your kindness." "Removed!" cried Bingley. "I must not be thought of. My sister, I am sure, will not hear of her removal." I hope he means that he, like, knows fully that they hate that they're here, and he's like, "Oh, my sister just loves their presence. She will not hear anything about them being removed." And she's just, like, glaring at him. "You may depend upon it, madam," said Miss Bingley, with cold civility, "that Miss Bennet shall receive every possible attention while she remains with us." Mrs. Bennet was profuse in her acknowledgments. "I am sure," she added, "if it was not for such good friends, I do not know what would become of her, for she is very ill indeed, and suffers a vast deal, though with the greatest patience in the world, which is always the way with her, for she has, without exception, the sweetest temper I have ever met with. I often tell my other girls they're nothing to her. We have a sweet room here, Mr. Bingley, and a charming prospect over that gravel walk. I do not know a place in the country that is equal to Netherfield. You will not think of quitting it in a hurry, I hope, though you have but a short lease." Amazing. So she's trying to talk Jane up and be like, "She's the sweetest person I ever met." Like, oh, she's even better than my other daughters. And then she, it's funny because she totally does not do that so far. She isn't like, "Oh, like, you girls, you're nothing to her." But Mr. Bennet does with Liz. And then she's like, "I hope you'll keep your, like, nice rich man manner, Mr. Bingley." Oh, wow. Norman says, "I just googled Ignaz Semmelweis, who was the pioneer of germ theory. He died in 1865, and they didn't believe him while he was alive. Oh dear, indeed, for sure. Oh yeah, I guess I probably should have known that, because Frankenstein was published in 1818, if I remember correctly, and I was pretty sure that they bled people at that time, so, but anyways, whatever I do is done in a hurry, replied he, and therefore, if I should resolve to quit Netherfield, I should probably be off in 5 minutes. At present, however, I consider myself quite fixed here. That's awesome. Yeah, I do everything fast, ma'am. Like, if I need to be out, I'm out in 5 minutes. I don't know if that's a great quality. I don't know if I'd want that quality in a man. That is exactly what I should have supposed of you, said Elizabeth. You begin to comprehend me, do you? Cried he, turning towards her. Oh yes, I understand you perfectly. I wish I might take this for a compliment, but to be so easily seen through, I'm afraid it is pitiful. This is as it happens. It does not necessarily follow that a deep, intricate character is more or less estimable than such a one as yours. The shade, it's like, oh yeah, like deep people, like they can be estimable. You're not deep though. Lizzie, cried her mother, remember where you are, and do not run on in this wild manner that you are suffered to do at home. I did not know before, continued Bingley immediately, that you were a studier of character. It must be an amusing study. Yes, but intricate characters are the most amusing. They have to have at least that advantage. We're starting to see what she's gonna see in Darcy, I think, because he is a lot more intricate. And here he's speaking. The country, said Darcy, can in general supply but few subjects for such a study. In a country neighbourhood you move in a very confined and unvarying society. The people themselves alter so much that there is something new to be observed in them forever. Yes, indeed, cried Mrs. Bennet, offended by his manner of mentioning a country neighbourhood. I assure you there is quite as much of that going on in the country as in town. Everybody was surprised, and Darcy, after looking at her for a moment, turned silently away. That's cute. He's not gonna fight her, he's just like, I am not engaging. Is that a bee in the corner? Mrs. Bennet, who fancied she had gained a complete victory over him, continued in her triumph. Oh no. I cannot see that London has any great advantage over the country for my part, except the shops and public places. The country is a vast deal pleasanter, is it not, Mr. Bingley? When I am in the country, he replied, I never wish to leave it. When I am in town, it is pretty much the same. They have each their advantages, and I can be equally happy in either. Again, one of those, like, I wouldn't think of pretty much as being used in a book at this time. Ghoulish. They did surgery without anesthesia. This is the third time I've mentioned this topic in 3 days. Maybe send help. Amazing. Aye, that is because you have the right disposition. But that gentleman, looking at Darcy, seemed to think the country was nothing at all. Indeed, mamma, you are mistaken, said Elizabeth, blushing for her mother. You quite mistook Mr. Darcy. He only meant that there were not such a variety of people to be met with in the country as in town, which you must acknowledge to be true. Ah, she's speaking up for him now. Certainly, my dear, nobody said that there were, but as to not meeting with many people in this neighbourhood, I believe there are few neighbourhoods larger. I know we dine with 24 families. Again, with the 24 counting that I'm not familiar with. Nothing but concern for Elizabeth could enable Bingley to keep his countenance. His sister was less delicate, and directed her eye towards Mr. Darcy with a very expressive smile. Elizabeth, for the sake of saying something that might turn her mother's thoughts, now asked her if Charlotte Lucas had been at Longbourn since her coming away. What was Bingley mad about? Like, this doesn't really concern him. This is... I mean, he should be familiar with Darcy kind of setting people off at this point, right? That... Because Darcy's just, like, says, like, oh, you can't meet that many interesting people in the country. And then Mrs. Bingley's like, how dare you say that, sir? There's so many interesting people here in the country. And Elizabeth is like... There's just less people in the country. And then it just seems like Mrs. Bennet is like, oh, I think I said Bingley. Mrs. Bennet is like, oh, like we're a particularly large neighborhood. So I don't see anything particularly like, about that last thing that she said. Oh, interesting. Norman says, oh man, I just had a weird realization. That old-timey way of counting in English is still how they count in French. And I have heard the tales of woe of people trying to learn French counting. Yeah. Norman, yeah, pretty much it feels weirdly modern somehow. Ghoulish. Maybe it's because many people are influenced by literature of this period? Possibly. Alright. French numbers are so dumb. Remind me what it is. Is it like 360s, or is it like counted from 60s or something? Like 60 and 10 and 3 or something like that. Okay. Yes, she called yesterday with her father. What an agreeable man Sir William is, Mr. Bingley. Is not he? And so much the man of fashion. So genteel and so easy. He has always something to say to everybody. That is my idea of good breeding. And those persons who fancy themselves very important and never open their mouths quite mistake the matter. Did Charlotte dine with you? No, she would go home. I fancy she was wanted about the mince pies. For my part, Mr. Bingley, I always keep servants that can do their own work. My daughters are brought up differently. That sounds like she's saying, my daughters are just built different. But everybody is to judge for themselves, and the Lucases are very good sort of girls, I assure you. It's a pity they are not handsome. Not that I think Charlotte so very plain, but then she is our particular friend. Is that all, Mrs. Bennet? I think so. And she's totally doing her thing where she's like, oh yeah, they're great, but they kind of, like, they're not pretty though. They're not like my daughters, you know. 20 and 10 or something. Like 84 in French is 424. Quattro. Wow. That is pretty crazy. Oh. She seems a very pleasant young woman, said Bingley. Oh dear, yes, but you must own she's very plain. Lady Lucas herself has often said so, and envied me Jane's beauty. I do not like to boast of my own child, but to be sure, Jane, one does not often see anybody better looking. It is what everybody says. I do not trust my own partiality. When she was only 15, there was a gentleman at my brother Gardiner's in town, so much in love with her that my sister-in-law was sure he would make her an offer before we came away. But however, he did not. Perhaps he thought her too young. However, he wrote some verses on her, and very pretty they were. And so ended his affection, said Elizabeth impatiently. There has been many a one, I fancy, overcome in the same way. I wonder who first discovered the efficacy of poetry in driving away love. Ooh, okay, so we learned she hates poetry. So is Mr. Darcy gonna win her over with some poetry? Yes! His next line. I have been used to consider poetry as the food of love, said Darcy. Of a fine, stout, healthy love it may. Everything nourishes what is strong already. But if it be only a slight, thin sort of inclination, I'm convinced that one good sonnet will starve it entirely away. Amazing. Again, that feels like a modern thought of, like, you know, people looking down on people writing angsty poetry, like, you totally think of this as the time where they write poetry to their lovers, and, you know, clearly they do, but it's so interesting that such an iconic book from this time is like, poetry, that'll kill love, you know? Darcy only smiled, and the general pause which ensued made Elizabeth tremble, lest her mother should be exposing herself again. She longed to speak, but could think of nothing to say, and after a short silence, Mrs. Bennet began repeating her thanks to Mr. Bingley for his kindness to Jane, with an apology for troubling him also with Lizzie. Mr. Bingley was unaffectedly civil in his answer, and forced his younger sister to be civil also, and say what the occasion required. She performed her part, indeed, without much graciousness. But Mrs. Bennet was satisfied, and soon afterward ordered her carriage. Upon this signal, the youngest of her daughters put herself forward. The two girls had been whispering to each other during the whole visit, and the result of it was that the youngest should tax Mr. Bingley with having promised on his first coming into the country to give a ball at Netherfield. Hang on a sec. Oh, I see. I didn't catch it. Forced his younger sister to be civil also. And, okay, so, and Lydia's like, I want a ball, because I want to dance with the captain. Lydia was a stout, well-grown girl of 15, with a fine complexion and good-humored countenance. A favorite with her mother, whose affection had brought her into public at an early age. She had high animal spirits and a sort of natural self-consequence, which the attentions of the officers, to whom her uncle's good dinners and her own easy manners recommended her, had increased into assurance. She was very equal, therefore, to address Mr. Bingley on the subject of the ball, and abruptly reminded him of his promise, adding that it would be the most shameful thing in the world if he did not keep it. His answer to this sudden attack was delightful to their mother's ear. I am perfectly ready, I assure you, to keep my engagement, and when your sister is recovered, you shall, if you please, name the very day of the ball. But you should not wish to be dancing while she is ill. Good man, true. and I'm sure he wants to dance with her, which is also nice. Lydia declared herself satisfied. Oh, yes, it would be much better to wait till Jane was well, and by that time, most likely Captain Carter would be at Meryton again. And when you have given your ball, she added, I shall insist on their giving one also. I shall tell Colonel Forster it will be quite a shame if he does not. Mrs. Bennet and her daughters departed, and Elizabeth returned instantly to Jane, leaving her own and her relations' behaviour to the remarks of the two ladies and Mr. Darcy, the latter of whom, however, could not be privileged to join in on the censure of her, in spite of all Miss Bingley's witticisms on fine eyes. Hang on. So I guess it's saying that Mr. Darcy, like, they're kind of bashing on the family, the sisters are, and Darcy maybe bashes on the others, but refuses to bash on Elizabeth. All right. Well, the fact that especially the fact that I had to keep pausing because I was like not able to understand perfectly and had to reread it. Tells me that it is indeed time to stop. So, yeah. So, this has been fun. Another adventure into the world of Pride and Prejudice. And I think I mentioned this already, but I was not expecting Darcy to fall in love with her so quickly. I was totally expecting it, like, them to keep hating each other for a while, and then like something specific to happen, like her to do something that makes him go like, you know what, like actually maybe I like her. But it actually just seems like he started out being like, she's not that pretty, I'm not into her, and then kind of immediately turns around and is like, maybe she is pretty though. maybe it's because she wasn't like affected by what he said, or that like maybe other girls, like when he treats them like that, they get super offended, and he's like but she's like, yeah, get a load of this guy, and maybe he found that attractive, I'm not sure. Give it time, maybe they'll re-hate each other, maybe so. But yes, this was very fun. I hope that you guys enjoyed your time. I certainly did. I'll see you guys hopefully tomorrow, but no promises. I never know how when I do Tale of Foundry streams, I like give it a sec to calm down because I'm so used to there being lag, so I like give it a minute or two just to make sure it wraps everything up. And I don't know if I need to keep doing that here or if it's fine. But yeah, been a good time. I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.